Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to wait just a few more minutes to ensure that everyone has had a chance to log on, and then we'll do introductions and launch the webinar. All right, I think we'll get going. My name is Matt Howard. I'm Vice President of Water Stewardship at the Water Council, and it's my pleasure to welcome you this morning to the launch of our brand new corporate water stewardship program, WAVE, or Water Stewardship Verified. We've got a lot of ground to cover today in our hour, but first I want to make a couple of brief introductions, some co-speakers that we're going to hear from a little bit later in today's session. I'd like to introduce Ray Mindock. She's Manager for Responsible Water Practices at SCS Global Services. Part of our program, WAVE, comes with independent verification. And we're going to hear from Ray about what SCS brings to the table in terms of independent verification. And then she's going to tell us, of course, more specifically what that means for our program. So thanks, Ray, for being here today and being one of our partners in this program launch.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Matt.
And then after Ray, Alan Gilden is going to wrap things up. He's Vice President of Global Quality with Watts Water Technologies. Through his CEO's leadership, Bob Pagano, Watts piloted the WAVE program. And so I got the opportunity to work with Alan and his team over the past year to pilot test this program to make sure it works in the real world. Alan is going to give us some insights and some key takeaways in terms of what they learned going through the WAVE program in the pilot test last year. Alan, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. So just a brief reminder that this session is being recorded. We'll tell you at the end of today's webinar how you can get your hands on this recording and, of course, hopefully share it inside your organizations as well as to your partners. The other thing that I do want to mention before we get started is that as you are let into the webinar, you are on mute. And so there is a Q&A at the end of this webinar. In order to submit your questions, use the Q&A function in Zoom, not the chat function, the Q&A function. And Dylan Waldhuter, our Director of Water Stewardship Solutions here at the Water Council, will moderate that Q&A at the end. So just keep that in mind and feel free to submit questions to the Q&A function as we roll through the webinar. So in today's agenda, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Water Council for those of you that don't know us and don't know our mission and history. But more importantly, we're going to spend some time on the challenge and why we developed this program, WAVE, and really what precipitated the need for this approach to good corporate water stewardship. Of course, our solution to this issue is the WAVE program itself, Water Stewardship Verified. So we'll spend some time kind of running through the high-level framework of this program. As I mentioned, independent verification is a feature and a requirement of the WAVE program. And so again, we're going to hear from Ray at SCS Global Services about independent verification. And I've already mentioned Alan and the Watts pilot testing, and they're going to tell us again at a high level some of the key takeaways and benefits of running through the WAVE pilot test in 2021. So that's our agenda today. I hope to keep about 15 or 20 minutes at the end of this session for Q&A. And again, don't forget to submit your questions via the Q&A function in Zoom. All right, so with that, let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit about the Water Council. Again, for those of you that don't know us, we are a nonprofit. We're headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We've been around for about 12 plus years. We are one of the world's preeminent global water hubs, and we're dedicated to solving critical water challenges, and we do that by driving innovation in freshwater technology and advancing water stewardship. So if you're a company out there, if you're an organization, whether you're in Wisconsin, North America, or even operating globally, the Water Council is there to work with you to address those water quality and quantity challenges. And so I mentioned we've been around for 12 years, but those 12 years are really built on over a century of innovation in this region centered around Lake Michigan. And some of you may be wondering, well, why Lake Michigan? Why Milwaukee? Why the Water Council? Quite frankly, Milwaukee sits on Lake Michigan and 20% of the world's freshwater reserves. And it was this abundant source of water that really attracted a lot of our early economic and historical development, especially with regards to our manufacturing in the city. Now, those of you that do know Milwaukee know the Water Council, know some of our work that we do in kind of the usual suspect sectors like food and beverage. But again, our work really spans the different sectors, and most manufacturing that was originally located in Milwaukee was in some way water dependent. Again, whether that was a food and beverage company or whether that was heavy manufacturing, metal bending, et cetera. And so alongside those historical manufacturers and businesses that grew up here in the region, the technologies to support their sustainable use of water resources grew up to support them. So think pumps, valves, water sensing technology, meters. And so those industries are still here. And it's really out of that growth of that innovation over the past century that really, again, led to the development of the Water Council and coalescing around this water technology hub and cluster. We focus for the first part of our mission as the Water Council on our innovation platform. And we've got 3 main programs as part of that platform. You can see those here at the bottom of the slide: our Tech Challenge, our Brew 2.0 Post Accelerator, and our pilot program. Again, essentially working with companies, working with other stakeholders to identify water-related technologies that need to get out into the marketplace to really help businesses address their water quality and quantity problems. If you've got questions after this webinar in terms of what we're doing around technology and innovation, obviously reach out to me. You'll see my contact details here at the end of the webinar, and I can connect you with our VP of Innovation, Karen Frost, and she can talk to you a little bit more detail about what we're doing in terms of technology. I also want to mention that we do have members at the Water Council, over 120 members from 10 different countries. And so again, our geographic focus isn't limited to the Great Lakes or even the United States. We do partner with others, other organizations and even countries to address, again, water quantity and quality challenges. So what brings you here today, though, really is our work that we've done on water stewardship. And that work, while not as long as the history of the Water Council, really the past 6 or 7 years, that work originally focused on helping to advocate and promote the use of the International Water Stewardship Standard, which is now governed by the Alliance for Water Stewardship. We essentially help develop and build out that global system with a specific remit for North America, working with companies from Canada to the US to Mexico to identify and address their water stewardship needs. And it's through that experience, through that work, that we really identified a gap in the marketplace. And that's why we're here today. We really feel our WAVE program meets a need or a demand that's out there right now in terms of water stewardship in the marketplace. And so it's that work that we did with our partners over the past 6-7 years on building the business case for water stewardship in North America that has really informed this program. Some of our other credentials include creating a credentialing program. And we, in fact, created the credentialing program, the first one for water professionals that's now administered by the Alliance for Water Stewardship. But more importantly, over the past 6 or 7 years, even outside of the use of the International Water Stewardship Standard, we've used and worked with clients on a variety of water stewardship issues, no matter where they're at in their water stewardship journey, from Fortune 100 companies all the way down to small family-owned businesses, and really, again, meeting them where they're at in their journey and working on their challenges, their opportunities as it relates to water use. And again, it's from this combined decades of experience that we've really developed our program here today, the WAVE program. I do want to mention that we launched a new tier of membership level as part of the Water Council called Water Champion. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Ray and SCS Global Services as our first and kind of founding member, if you will, of our Water Champion membership level. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Alan and the team at Watts as being members of the Water Council as well. So again, thanks to Ray and Alan, who we'll hear from in a little bit here. for continuing to be good partners and good advocates of ours around water stewardship. So, all right, let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit about why we developed this program and specifically the challenge or the need that it addresses. I think it goes without saying, hopefully, that most of you recognize we live in a water-stressed world. We don't need to go more than a day or two without reading some new crisis, whether it's here in the United States or somewhere globally. You know, right now there's a massive, winter storm that's going to wreak havoc on the United States and primarily areas of the country that aren't necessarily used to getting winter storms. So there's a water-related impact happening right now today in the U.S. Of course, we've heard about drought in the West, saltwater intrusion in the Gulf Coast, and again, myriad of water-related issues and crises here in North America and globally. One of the primary phenomena, of course, driving, and maybe the primary phenomena driving these water crises is climate change. Most of us are going to feel the impacts of climate change through our relationship with water, and whether that's how we're sourcing it, or using it in our process as a business, or simply through our lives on a day in and day out basis in the communities where we're located. Those water-related impacts are going to have an effect on how we operate, both from a business perspective, but also from a community perspective. And so it's really against this backdrop of this increasing amount of stress on our water resources, again, that has led us to develop this program to really work with businesses to address problems that they're facing across their enterprise on water quantity and quality. We know that those disruptions as it relates to water quantity and quality have an impact on direct operations, but also supply chains. If you've been following, and I'm sure most of you have, the supply chain story and disruption story over the past year, no doubt you've read about the microchip issue and microchip shortage globally and specifically here in the US and in certain sectors. Part of that disruption was exacerbated early on by a drought in Taiwan. Microchip manufacturing is quite water intensive. And so again, it's not just the usual suspects in terms of food and beverage or the regions that we view as water scarce where these problems emanate. It's affecting all of us almost everywhere. And so no matter where you're operating or no matter where your supply chains stretch, the WAVE program will help you address those issues. We also know that these disruptions impact profit margins. This is a triple bottom line program in that it works in terms of a financial benefit, but also in terms of the people and as well as our natural resources and the planet. But those financial impacts are real and important, and this program will certainly address those. And then last but not least, in the world of water stewardship, we know there's a direct connection between performance and credible performance and brand value. I think most of us, again, kind of as we make our way through this pandemic, we've noticed and recognized companies with purpose or brands with purpose. And water can be directly connected to that brand enhancement and that brand value. So it's more important than ever, again, to protect that brand value. And that really goes at some important operational considerations like social license to operate and social license to grow. And so investors, regulators, consumers, customers, other stakeholders with ever increasing pressure now are asking companies to do something about water stewardship. And even more specifically, looking at ESG and ESG related investors and the whole ESG investment phenomenon, reporting phenomenon, there is a greater pressure on companies to act and to act credibly on water stewardship related issues. So this program is really going to help us cut through the complexity of these water issues. We know these water issues are local, we know they're diverse, but we know they're different than other sustainability issues. And so many of us bring a carbon mindset or a waste reduction mindset or energy efficiency mindset to the water stewardship game. And in fact, it can be quite difficult with a high barrier of entry to really jump meaningfully into water stewardship from a corporate perspective. And so in our work over the past 6 or 7 years, we've really recognized this barrier to entry. And so our program, our WAVE program, really helps cut through this complexity for companies, gives them a good starting point and entry point into water stewardship, while demystifying key water stewardship concepts and best practices. We really do want to lower the barrier of entry for companies getting involved in starting their water stewardship journey. We've done this through the development of a continuous improvement methodology. This recognizes the fact that companies come to us and have come to us at all different stages of their water stewardship maturity, in all different sizes of companies, with all different types of uses and needs as it relates to water resources. So taking this plan, do, check, act approach without being overly prescriptive, we feel is a key advantage of this program. And again, recognizes in the real world just the differences of companies and where they're at on their knowledge and their performance on water stewardship. The WAVE was meant to be a bridge and really bridge the gap between intention and implementation. No doubt you read about the execution gap as it relates to general sustainability goals and targets, but more specifically on water stewardship. Companies want to do something on water stewardship, but again, even after setting commitment statements or setting goals and targets, still have trouble figuring out the best way to operationalize those commitments and to roll it out across the enterprise. Well, WAVE will help you do that. We'll take water stewardship from the boardroom to the shop floor. We'll make it real for your company. And ultimately, again, at the end of the day, you'll be able to talk credibly and transparency about your WAVE-related performance and be able to directly respond to investor pressure, whether that's ESG related or other types of pressures, as well as being directly responsive to key stakeholders. So WAVE wasn't just dreamed up alone in a vacuum. I mentioned that Watts Water helped us pilot test this. We actually worked with 4 companies to pilot test: A.O. Smith, Badger Meter, Nutrien, and Watts Water. And so we worked with them over the course of 2021. Basically, the framework that they worked through in 2021 is more or less the framework that you're going to be seeing here that we roll out in 2022. It's been fine-tuned, again, to be more responsive to what's happening in the real world, but I do want to thank our pilot testers, and again, Alan in particular, for being here today to tell us a little bit about their experience in a bit. We also benefited in our pilot test from a European-based ESG asset manager, as well as a sustainability ratings agency. And the reason that we had them participate and provide some key feedback to us over the course of the year, again, is we wanted to ensure not only is there recognized water stewardship performance, again, inside the corporation, but we want companies to talk about this publicly, and we want it to be useful and responsive, again, to this increasing pressure that companies are facing around reporting on ESG-related factors. We also conducted extensive stakeholder outreach and engagement over the course of 18 months as we developed this program. Over 70 different stakeholder groups, organizations, companies, nonprofits, et cetera, you name it, we talked to them. And it really culminated for us last summer. Our program was actually accepted into the National Science Foundation's Innovation Core program. It's an accelerator, so we actually participated in an accelerator for this program. It helped us refine our approach, our idea, do extensive customer discovery and research. So again, we really spent an intentional amount of time developing and informing the development of this program before we rolled it out to you all here today. So what is our WAVE program? Well, again, at a high level, it's going to guide companies to take meaningful action on water stewardship. And as you can see up here, we say water stewardship versus water management. Don't get me wrong, water management is important. You know, companies need to have efficiency measures in place as it relates to water. The problem is many companies think that their relationship with water stops there. It stops with efficiency and it stops with management. When in fact, water stewardship really gets a company to move beyond treating water as an input to production that you simply move quickly through your facility and down a pipe. and really begin viewing water as an asset that needs to be stewarded. And I go back to this idea around brand value. Water stewardship, a true water stewardship stance and approach for a company leads to enhanced brand value. And so WAVE, again, is a water stewardship program. And in fact, we're really working through the WAVE program to define what it means to be a good corporate water steward. So it's the only continuous improvement methodology out there right now for improving reporting and recognizing good corporate water stewardship. I don't know of any other framework that's out there right now in this regard. Again, it's going to really help companies expand their enterprise-wide risk radar as it relates to water issues. So water uses, water impacts, shared challenges and opportunities. Ultimately, we want it to lead to strategic action both inside and outside the fence line. That's where true water stewardship and true value creation begins for companies in terms of water stewardship. Outside the fence line, in collaboration with others. WAVE will get you started down that path. Ultimately, companies who participate in this program are going to demonstrate that they are prioritizing water-related action where it matters most. We don't want to leave our stakeholders scratching their heads, wondering why we're doing what we're doing on water. We don't want others to tell our water stewardship story for us. We want to control that narrative, but we want to do so credibly and transparently. WAVE will give you the tools to do that, to have those conversations, to communicate those actions and commitments, and to talk about your water stewardship performance. All right, so let's jump in a little bit here into a high-level overview of the WAVE methodology. As the term up there, accelerator, implies, again, this really will help accelerate your water stewardship performance, again, in a way that's verifiable. While we're not getting into our secret sauce here, so to speak, in terms of the proprietary process and best practices that we've developed in terms of our WAVE methodology, you can see at a high level here, moving from left to right, some general best practices around water stewardship performance. Of course, we get more specific and detailed in the WAVE methodology itself, but just to give you a sense of how we move companies into this improved water stewardship stance and performance, of course, you got to start with the basics, right? Understand water uses, impacts, and risks. And again, it's just not at a single facility or with one key partner. It's really having an understanding across the value chain and across the enterprise about how water is used, how water is impacted, and again, what that means in terms of risk. Back to this idea of expanding your enterprise-wide risk radar. Ultimately, that leads, of course, to developing some corporate water policies or commitment statements around water that are informed by context. Ultimately leading to you to prioritize those sites where water-related risks can be mitigated, where it's most important to address your resources and your time around addressing water stewardship issues. And then again, at the end of the day, we want you to tell your water stewardship story. That's so important. We want you to communicate what action plans you may have developed, your goals and your timelines, again, that result from going through the WAVE methodology. Make that known to your key stakeholders. At the end of the day, again, what we feel one of the distinguishing features of this program and a requirement for companies that participate in WAVE is independent verification. And so independent verification for us is obviously critically important, but I think for all of you, especially private sector companies out there that are interested in going through this methodology, it's a way, again, to credibly communicate to key stakeholders that you've gone through this program, that you're committed to water stewardship. And again, you've had a third party verify that. It's not just you making that claim or not just us at the Water Council making that claim. So again, really a key feature for us in terms of the WAVE. I also should note, we do have normative documents that will be provided to WAVE participants. We have the methodology itself. We've also developed a comprehensive implementation guide and glossary to really help you interpret the different steps and indicators and required metrics within the WAVE methodology. SCS Global has put together a verification package for companies. And within that verification package, there is a conformity matrix. And so you'll know right from the beginning what you need to do to conform with the WAVE methodology to put you in a great position to be able to pass and successfully receive that independent verification. That conformity matrix is written in black and white. It's meant to be clear, and again, to provide a North Star for you as you work through the WAVE program. So just in terms of the claim statement, I showed you the logo on the previous screen. You can see here at the bottom the claim statement that will be available to companies that successfully complete the independent verification. Essentially, your company has assessed water-related risk across the enterprise, identified the highest water-related impacts using credible water-related data, and implemented best practice in improving water stewardship performance. That's an important claim. And again, in a few slides here, I'm going to turn it over to Ray, and she's going to talk more about SCS and independent verification and why making such claims is important. And again, you can see the logo there that you would receive upon successfully completing independent verification. All right, as I move towards completing my portion here of the presentation, just highlighting again some of the benefits, some of the high-level benefits to company participation in our WAVE program. Of course, we feel it's going to lead to improving water-related risk awareness and performance. I talked about the triple bottom line. This development of this program really views that as kind of baked into the structure, right? So financial benefits as well as benefits to people that work for you and work with you. And then most importantly, right, that impact on water and those natural resources that depend on water. So improving that risk awareness and that performance. WAVE also aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 6, SDG 6. For those of you with companies that are aligning your sustainability actions around the SDGs, 6 is clean water sanitation for all. There are, of course, other SDGs which touch on water, but again, this program is a strong signal to external stakeholders at the corporate level that you are aligning with these global goals around sustainable development. This next bullet is really important for us here at the Water Council and our partners. The WAVE program was developed to be complementary to existing platforms that are already out there on water stewardship, whether that's the CEO Water Mandate or Science-Based Targets Initiative. It's really, again, meant to fill a gap in the marketplace around defining and recognizing good corporate water stewardship. It can help companies operationalize those commitments that they've made under different existing water stewardship platforms, or help them strategically deploy and utilize things like science-based targets once they have gone through the WAVE process. It certainly, again, supplements corporate reporting and external reporting, and really is meant to work hand in hand with ESG frameworks that are out there, especially those that touch on water, right? Many of you are quite familiar with CDP and GRI. Some of you, I'm sure, use SASB and others. But again, the water stewardship story, if you will, of a given corporation utilizing those frameworks isn't necessarily the complete picture of what it means to be a good corporate water steward. And so again, the outputs from WAVE and the framework that you'll develop going through the WAVE program can supplement those corporate reports. And again, tell a credible and a more comparable story on water stewardship from company to company as it relates to things that investors care about, customers, and other key stakeholders. I've talked about the issue of credibility and transparency. And last but not least, this isn't the end of the road, right, when it comes to water stewardship. For those of you that are out there and have been working in corporate water stewardship issues for years, it's an iterative process. We talked about this being a continuous improvement methodology. We mean it. We want you to continue down that path of improving and maturing in terms of your water stewardship performance, even after you've finished working with the Water Council and WAVE. We feel this program is the foundation from which to launch the development or refining your corporate water strategy. All right, one more slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ray. I know she's waiting patiently there, as is Alan. WAVE is a fee-based program. It's structured, again, to meet your specific needs. It's really meant to be tailored to the context of how your enterprise, your company uses and impacts water resources. So it's open to any company, any sector, any region. The way that we ensure that WAVE works for you and that, again, it is customized to your needs is we'll set up a free consultation at the beginning of the process to really better understand where you're at right now in terms of your water-related accomplishments and gaps. That consultation will inform how we structure your engagement going through our multi-step WAVE process. Of course, if you're interested on this, on the WAVE, on Water Champions, on water technology, you can contact us at the Water Council and me specifically. You can see my email there. My contact information is going to come back up at the end of this webinar. You can also go to thewatercouncil.com and find all this information there. And then once accepted into the WAVE program, again, companies will receive the documents that I talked about, the implementation guide, the conformity matrix, et cetera. There's not going to be any doubt about what you need to do to conform with this program. And in fact, we'll work with you and we'll include a set amount of technical advisory services hours from myself or Dylan, just to make sure, again, that that implementation guide, that conformity matrix is clear to you. We want to set you up on a path to success. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ray Mindock to tell us a little bit about herself in SCS Global. Over to you, Ray.
Yep. Thanks, Matt. Again, I'm Ray Mindock. I'm the manager of SCS's responsible water practices. I have been lucky enough to be working with the Water Council for quite a few years now in the water stewardship space. And we are very happy that SCS has been able to work with the Water Council in this partnership. Okay, a little bit about SCS Global Services. SCS was established in 1984, initially as to support product certification in the ag industry. Since then, we've grown. We are now a global leader in third-party sustainability certification and standard development. SCS serves multiple sectors, from ag to forestry. Now you can see, we move into the built environment. Water typically straddles corporate sustainability and climate services. Those are the sectors we work in the most. SCS, as a body, specializes in auditing, testing, verification programs. We do life cycle analysis. We also have an independent standard development body and have recently established a strategic consulting services. With all of our programs, we observe science-backed methodologies and solutions. Within SCS, we have a dedicated team of auditors and have a strong reputation for quality. As a third-party leader, we are a voice for making independent, accurate claims. Okay, now a little bit about what SCS is doing with the Water Council with the WAVE program. So SCS will verify the WAVE program, and just a little bit what verification is. It's basically auditing. We are going to be conducting an audit on the WAVE program and how you're performing against the requirements. Why a third-party verification matters? Well, that's pretty important. Neutral third party is critical to providing really independent perspective when we're looking at audits or other programs. At SCS, we have credibility, which is substantiated through many national and international accreditations. Third-party credible audits are the way we work. We assist clients when it comes to identifying and improving opportunities in your water stewardship program. And at the same time, we're really building customer and stakeholder confidence. We will differentiate your program with the validated claims we're able to make against the WAVE program. Another advantage is looking at decision makers. They want to make informed choices, and that will provide a competitive edge to your enterprise. In addition, independent verification really will drive growth of sustainable business practices and allow the development of really good leadership standards. And those leadership standards will push continuous improvement throughout your enterprise. The third-party validation really demonstrates your commitment to sustainability with validated claims, which adds credibility to the ESG reporting. That's really what we're all here for. And now I'd like to introduce Alan. Alan is going to walk us through what he's learned while participating within the WAVE program.
Great, thank you, Ray. You can go to the next slide. Hello, everyone. I'm Alan Gilden. I'm head of Watts Water Technologies Quality and Continuous Improvement Functions, and I've been driving Watts' environmental focus for sustainability for the last 3 years. In case you're not familiar with Watts Water Technologies, we're a global manufacturer headquartered in North Andover, Massachusetts, that provides one of the broadest plumbing, heating, and water quality product lines in the world. Our companies and brands offer innovative plumbing, heating, and water quality solutions for residential, commercial, and industrial applications. We have about 4,800 people around the globe, 27 countries. In April of last year, at the prompting of our CEO, Bob Pagano, Watts joined the Water Council to help expand our enterprise focus on water stewardship. Immediately on joining the Water Council, we began the pilot of the WAVE program. We were simply looking for a meaningful and effective way to get started in our water stewardship journey. The process defined by the WAVE program did just that for us. And here are some of the highlights. We started by identifying pilot sites. We used WRI's Water Risk Atlas tool, Aqueduct, to target sites in water risk regions. In addition, we selected sites who are some of our largest water consumers. In all, we engaged about 8 sites across the globe to execute the WAVE program. The next thing we did was identify the watersheds where these sites were. When we evaluated the origins of the water that we used, we immediately saw benefits right from the start. Contacting municipalities for details on the watershed made available free services and audits by the water providers, and connected us with local organizations with similar water stewardship focus. Then we conducted detailed water balances in every factory. This offered even more opportunities for water conservation and new emphasis on maintaining cleanliness as the water moved through our operations. Finally, engaging our communities was a key step to ensure connections were made with other users of our shared water resource. A variety of stakeholders, including water and wastewater treatment utilities, community-based watershed associations, city officials, vendors, and third-party services were engaged in a direct dialogue with each of our 8 sites. You can go to the next slide. As a result of the program, we took a variety of actions at the local and global level to reduce our water consumption, increase reuse, improve water quality, and reduce the negative impacts upstream and downstream of our facilities. These included expanded water metering, continued community engagement, and specific site projects across these sites. We updated our corporate environmental health, safety, and sustainability policy to reflect our desire to advance our global enterprise and local water stewardship actions across our facilities. And in January, we published our water stewardship journey on our watts.com website. Overall, when we started our sustainability journey, we had a lot of focus within our 4 walls. We understood exactly how we were using water, but through this WAVE program, we are now identifying and prioritizing water-related action, mitigating water-related risk, and addressing shared water challenges and opportunities across the watersheds where we operate to build an even more water-resilient supply chain. It's been a pragmatic and effective program for us, which we plan to continue for the rest of our sites across the globe.
Excellent. Thank you, Alan. And again, thanks to Watts Water and all of our pilot testers for helping us refine this program. and this approach over the past year. I do want to mention that we are actually developing case studies, actual case study documents that you'll be able to access on our website. You'll see those in the near future coming from a couple of our pilot testers, including Watts. I would be remiss too if I didn't point out at the bottom our new website, or at least our URL, waveverified.com. Again, you can find all the information on our program on Wave there at that website. All right, so I think we've got just about 15 minutes or so here for questions and answer. For those of you that haven't utilized the Q&A function yet, again, please feel free to do so. Submit your question that way. I'm going to turn it over to Dylan here in a second. He's going to moderate the Q&A session. For whatever reason, if you can't get your question submitted, we'll have our contact information up, or my contact information up at the end of the webinar here in the next slide. And again, feel free to directly reach out to us. We're happy to have those conversations and answer those questions. So with that, Dylan, I'm going to turn it over to you just to start fielding some of these questions to Ray, Alan, or myself.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'll address one question quickly. Somebody asked about sharing slides after the presentation. We won't be sharing the slides publicly, but we will include a link to the recording of the webinar in a follow-up email at the conclusion of the webinar, so you can look out for that. First question here is for Matt, and it was asked multiple times, so we'll address it first. Is WAVE meant to compete with other water stewardship programs or approaches? And maybe asked a bit differently, how does it compare to or align with other water stewardship programs or approaches?
Yeah, great question. So we were very intentional at the outset and over the course of the development of this program that it was not meant to be competitive with current water stewardship approaches out there. And in fact, we strongly feel again that this program meets a need or a gap that's out there right now in the marketplace. I mentioned just a couple of efforts back in a couple of slides. I talked about the CEO Water Mandate. I talked about science-based targets initiative, contextual targets, ISO standards. WAVE is really meant to be the gap between the boardroom and the shop floor, between making CEO level commitments on water stewardship and operationalizing those commitments and developing really a strategic deployment of water stewardship across the enterprise. So this is a question certainly that we can dive into a little bit deeper in terms of one-on-one conversations with those of you that are interested in the WAVE. So for those of you that may have already engaged on some of those initiatives I mentioned, maybe you've already done some aqueduct risk assessment or you've used the WWF water risk filter. Again, we can pull those efforts into WAVE and ensure that WAVE is a complementary approach to your corporate water stewardship strategy development.
And then a related question for you, Matt. What's the value of WAVE versus other sustainability and water specific reporting and scoring frameworks?
Yeah, so a little bit more nuance here. WAVE is not meant to technically be a reporting framework, whether that's for ESG related stakeholders or investors or just general sustainability reporting. The information, the actions, the commitments that you develop by going through WAVE, those are meant to be reported through those relevant frameworks. And to the extent that those frameworks don't allow you to necessarily capture your whole water stewardship story, we feel that WAVE provides at least a framework that you can use as supplementary information to those sustainability reports and those other reporting frameworks. Part of our discovery in developing the WAVE program over the past 18 months was some pretty extensive conversations, again, with different players in the ESG space, and of course, corporate issuers, private companies in someone's supply base, and they're reporting back up to a corporation that's making an ESG report. We received a lot of feedback right now Number one, about the Wild West nature of ESG reporting. I'm sure many of you kind of feel that stress, when it comes to annual reporting. WAVE isn't necessarily the answer to all the water-related issues right now that exist within ESG reporting frameworks, or the difficulty that companies have with telling a credible and nuanced water stewardship story. But we feel it's a step in the right direction. It provides, again, a framework for you to elevate what you're doing and your accomplishments on water stewardship in those appropriate frameworks. And of course, we at the Water Council and our partners here with Watts, the other pilot testers, SCS Global and others, we're going to continue to engage in those ESG conversations, and to the extent that WAVE needs to be refined itself, so employing that continuous improvement methodology to the program itself to better respond to some of those needs and gaps in the ESG marketplace, will do that.
Excellent, thanks, Matt. Next question is going to be for Alan. As you evolved your approach on water from being informed by management to more of a stewardship approach, you noted that you started to look outside the fence line of the factories. Can you share with us some of the biggest surprises or successes that you had when conducting your watershed analysis and starting to take that more watershed scale approach?
Yeah, we were able to access a lot of information out there. So that was really the first kind of surprise for us. A lot of information readily available about watersheds, and as I mentioned, getting help from utilities and things like that. The other thing is, I was pretty surprised that there are a lot of community organizations that we were able to get in touch with. Community organizations in Ningbo, China, in Plovdiv, Bulgaria, that were all focused on water stewardship, and we got a lot of good connections and good feedback from them. The other thing is, as we were doing the watershed analysis, I think one of my biggest surprises was, we have a factory in northeast Tunisia, and the watershed for Tunisia is essentially north and west. So, water coming all the way across the country through channels and transfer lines, that was one of my biggest, ahas, at least from some of our sites. And I thought, okay, we got to really take care of the water that we're using here.
Thanks, Alan. Question for Ray. Can you share a bit more about the validation process, the details of it, and then specifically maybe talk about how often audits would be conducted for verification?
Sure. Thanks, Dylan. Yes, right now, what we're really doing, and you characterize it correctly, what the verification is going to be an audit against the 6 steps within the program. For example, we've talked about risk. We will look at water risk across the organization and really look at 1 or 2 of your facilities and drill down a bit and determine that you've accurately addressed your water risk. What we're assuming is going to happen at this point is the verification is going to be a 2-year process. Generally, when you're trying to develop a water stewardship program corporate-wide, it's going to take a couple of years. So this isn't, annual reporting at this point. We're really looking at a 2-year audit cycle.
And just to jump in here too, and and play off that comment, and just to be clear too, in terms of actually walking through the steps of the WAVE program and conforming with the different indicators and metrics, the program is really meant to be completed within a quarter, if you will, 3 to 4 months time frame. And then what Ray was referring to in terms of the verification period, once verified by SCS Global, that lasts for a period of 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I jumped ahead too soon.
No, that's
yeah.
Next question's back to Matt. This person's asking if their company doesn't currently have a water program in place at all, Is WAVE a place to start, or would another framework be potentially more beneficial?
Yes, WAVE is definitely the place to start. Again, it's really meant to be that entry point into corporate water stewardship. We really have taken great pains in developing this program to make it clear and concise. I talked about demystifying water stewardship concepts and best practices earlier. Again, we're going to help translate, some of those terms of art in water stewardship world into language that you understand at your company that works for your industry. And we're going to accelerate your path down your water stewardship journey and get you to the point. Again, hopefully you can use WAVE and those outcomes as a foundation to develop a water strategy. That being said, if you're a company that's already done some work on water stewardship, maybe you even have a commitment or a policy statement in place, or maybe you have some goals that need to be revised, because WAVE is a plan, do, check, act approach to good corporate water stewardship, the program will still work for you. And again, kind of building on this idea of continuous improvement, going back and looking at maybe some assessments or risk assessments that you've done, 3 or 4 years ago. Now's a good time to engage us in WAVE. I mentioned climate conditions and water impacts. They're changing yearly, if not seasonably, just in terms of what's happening around water availability and variability and things of those natures. So again, even if you've made some commitments, already started down that path of water stewardship, WAVE will work for you. But yes, back to the original question, definitely start with us, reach out, let's have a conversation so we can better ascertain what your goals are, what your needs are, and how water fits into how you operate. So that's really important, and we can do that with WAVE.
Another frequently asked question you could potentially address. Can you maybe say a bit more about what water stewardship means in practice and how it informs more meaningful action? You talked a little bit about this paradigm between water management and water stewardship. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, so I think over the past, few years or so, when it comes to water stewardship, there's been a development and an understanding that we know, or we think we know, what water stewardship looks like from a facility level, at a farm, at a factory. We know that it goes beyond simple water efficiency and water conservation. We know that kind of at that level of the facility, it also means looking at issues of water quality, both source water coming into the facility, but also potentially how your facility is impacting local water quality, whether that's through stormwater runoff or direct discharges or outfalls into local water bodies. So kind of expanding the scope now from efficiency to quality, but then also building in regulatory considerations as well. And so for companies that are out there, in particular companies that have direct withdrawal, whether that's from surface or groundwater sources, the regulatory environment is changing from state to state. And so if you've got your own wells, you've got injection wells, if you're managing water and cleaning water on site, or in some cases, companies are actually providing water to third parties. That's a very complex regulatory environment, and there can be sort of hidden obstacles there in terms of improving water stewardship performance. So we've got to go from efficiency to quality to regulatory, and then last but not least, in terms of fully understanding what it means to be a good water steward, is that reputational aspect of water stewardship. So whether you're credibly engaging on a water program or not, your stakeholders may perceive or misperceive how you're using or impacting water resources. And so there's an opportunity here again to tell that story and to address those issues of reputational risk. And so for water stewardship, you're expanding your issue radar, which I've already described. You're ensuring that your facility, and more importantly, your company on an enterprise-wide basis, is really aligning itself around what it means to be a good water steward in the communities where you operate. So really kind of get beyond your own fence line. And I know at a corporate basis and across the enterprise, that concept might be a little nebulous and hard to kind of wrap your mind around. That's why we've developed WAVE. Through the WAVE process, we'll give you that information, we'll give you that confidence, we'll help you do those risk assessments to understand the context and the water issues where you're operating, so you can be a good corporate steward and then deploy your resources across your sites in order to have the most meaningful impact on local water resources. So you're using water sustainably, you're expanding your risk radar to cover all the different types of risks that emanate from water stress and water uses. And at the end of the day, we're looking for others to engage with in terms of addressing shared water challenges and opportunities. So it's a pretty big question. It's hard to answer, in a couple minutes here. But again, I think for any of the questions or any of the folks that are on the webinar right now, we're here to have those conversations, to answer those questions, and again, hopefully have it resonate with you where you're at right now in terms of your water program and how WAVE can fit into that and really, again, accelerate your water stewardship performance.
I do want to mention there's a handful of questions here that we won't have time to get to. We do have a frequently asked questions section on our website where many of these questions are addressed, and that will also be included in the follow-up materials. So you can look for that information there. Maybe, Matt, one more question. Can you just share with the attendees where this information can be found with regard to the steps and the specific criteria? How do attendees get access to that?
Right. So we would need to set up, again, a consultation with you upon commitment and entry into the program. Then, that's when we would provide you with what we're calling our normative documents, the WAVE steps themselves with the indicators and metrics. Just to let you know, there's 6 indicators, 37 metrics as part of the program. Again, leading you down a path of improving your overall water stewardship performance. We've got that implementation guidance, et cetera, to provide you. And so we can kind of get a little bit deeper in terms of that consultation about, the key aspects of the program. You can see the website information up here, waveverified.com. You can also find us through thewatercouncil.com. I know Ray and SCS Global Services are going to have a responsible water practices site as well, which will reference this program and other programs that they're developing. And then Alan mentioned that Watts, is already, and they had a really great press release on this recently, talked publicly about, their water-related aspects of their sustainability program. And then, of course, you can contact me directly at the information here on your screen. And again, we can jump into all this information. So I think just looking at the timing here, we're essentially at the top of the hour. I do want to thank all of you that stuck with us through this hour. Of course, again, I want to thank Ray and Alan for their time today, for the contributions to the development of this program, to rolling out this program. You guys have been great partners. Your companies are great partners of ours. And I know really a benefit to the water stewardship community in general. So again, thanks to you all, and thanks to your leadership. And of course, thanks to you who joined us today. Please keep in touch with us. Even if WAVE isn't necessarily a good fit for you, we want to talk to you. We want to hear more about what you're doing around water and how the Water Council can support you in that growth in your own water mission. So with that, from all of us here at the Water Council, to all of you, have a great day. Thanks again for joining us here on this webinar.
Thank you.